Welcome back to Odd Socks. So, one of the jobs I'm trying to get on with at the moment, in between the rain that we've had, is to remove a lot of this plastic. Now, this plastic is quite a heavy duty, thick builder's plastic, so it's not going to degrade anytime soon. And it wasn't to be used for long term. It was just to suppress any weeds in areas that we weren't going to be working at the time. This area is incredibly weedy with either perennials and lots of annual seeds. And a lot of those annuals actually set a lot of seed last year. So we knew that this was going to be a bit of a problem. So today what I want to do is actually remove this and actually have a look at the ground. I will be digging in the flower area, which will also uncover from the plastic too. And this area is where I top dressed the soil with a load of scraps, leaves and grass. About 3 months ago now, I would have thought it was. Now I covered it up because the foxes were just digging around and it was pooping in it and everything else. But really it should have been left open in the air. But we'll take a look at it and see if it's made any difference to the top of the surface. In other words, composted down somewhat. So we'll just take a look. Now there's an awful lot of water on this, so let's see if we can not get too wet. Now, this area is basically where I grew my corn last year, and it's going to be where I grow my corn this year. Now, it's very uneven ground, and I'll be bringing the corn further forward as well. I'll be taking over part of this bed as well. This bed is no dig. This bed I'll actually be digging through. Now, there is some perennials there, and there is an awful lot of worms. What I think I'm going to do is give this a little rake over because it has become quite a solid mass. Now I don't want to disturb this too much because I don't want the leaves all blowing away, but I do need to even it out a little bit. Now this isn't so much of a growing medium. It's more putting some goodness back into the soil. Now last year, we only put a handful of compost into this bed in the holes where we actually planted the corn. And even though the corn grew, I know I can get better growth out of my corn this year. Well, that's the hope. But I'm just trying to get a little bit of air in between. And what I'll do is leave that for another couple of months because nothing's going to get planted in there until probably late April, even May. But I do want to level it off a little bit if I can. Now whatever's left by then, it will be dug into the soil, just in the top few inches. And hopefully that will give that corn that extra little bit of nutrients that it probably desperately needs if it's going back into this bed. No doubt that fox is going to have a real good time in that bed. Now it would have been so much better if I actually hadn't covered it in this plastic. But like I said, I tried it for a couple of days and the foxes were literally pooping and digging it up and having a whale of a time. But the plastic can sometimes not help. It's very, very wet, but at the same time it has been very, very wet. So fingers crossed that this will dry out somewhat a little bit so it can carry on decomposing. Now this other bit of plastic, which I think, well, I've got one more piece to come up after this one. This is the area where I'm going to be growing my wildflowers and some of the flowers that I actually managed to grow this year from seed. I have got some plants that are coming from my own garden, which are really good pollinators and beneficial for all the good insects. And I'm probably going to start moving those over, well, as soon as what I can. Now this is very, very wet. And it has got still an awful lot of couch grass roots, which I am going to have to dig out because I'm not doing that no dig bed on the flowers. We haven't got the compost this year, and the good thing about no dig beds, you don't have to rush it. You're better off getting it right in a couple of beds first, something that you can afford to do or manage to make enough compost to do, and slowly build up those no dig beds over time. Don't be in such a rush to do it all in one go. Now I'm going to have to move all this plastic completely and actually let this area drain off before I actually do anything with it. It is really heavy clay and there is hardly any topsoil at all on this allotment because it was removed by a previous tenant, and I don't want to be digging really wet, heavy clay soil. It's just not my thing. Now, it really doesn't take much time for me to actually get really, really muddy. I can never find my gloves, and I've had so many pairs stolen by the foxes. They really do love burying the gloves and chewing the fingers off. So if you can imagine this whole area just being full of wildflowers. Now this area will go all the way up towards the top. Now be it wildflowers, dahlias, lavender, anything that I can get my hands on, I'm going to be trying to bring in down to the allotment because I think we've got plenty of space here to introduce these plants and these flowers. I'm really, really hoping to bring in enough pollinators and enough beneficial insects to really help with any pest issues on the allotment. Now, last year we struggled quite a lot with a lot of slugs. Now, I know this was nationwide. I know that there was a lot of people struggling with slugs last year because it was so wet. And I know a lot of farmers were struggling quite a lot with slugs as well. Black fly and white fly was a bit of an issue last year as well, and they seem to be lingering around for much longer in the season than what they used to. So I want to bring in things that's going to feast on that. And bringing in those flowers, those bulbs, be it the early spring bulbs to try and get the bumblebees and the early pollinators that need that extra bit of food early on in the year, or whether it lasts through to autumn to early winter. I really want to start building up the flowers in the area. Now obviously I'm going to do this over time. I have got seeds to grow and plants to come down for this year, but I'm hoping over the next few years I can introduce more and more of the plants into the areas to bring in those beneficial pollinators. For me to add a little bit of interest and some height and bring in some of these lovely flowers onto the allotment, I want to be able to create some nice vertical areas, especially for my sweet peas. Now, if you've got an allotment or a plot or a growing area where it is quite intense sun throughout the summer, which pretty much this is, I've only got a small area down the bottom that's a little bit more shaded. When you're working your plan out, you've got things like lettuces and other things like that and pak choi that really doesn't like intense sun. By creating a vertical flower wall or a vertical bean or any vegetables or fruit that climbs, you can safely grow your lettuces and your pak choi and other things that like that little bit of shade, and it will stop them bolting very, very easily. Now, we haven't 100% guaranteed where we're planting everything because we're just finalising our plans, because that's the whole point of a plan. It's supposed to be fluid. It's supposed to be able to be changed if and when you need to. But what I am going to be doing is placing some poles in areas that I would like to grow some sweet peas up. Now I will be making this a bit stronger, but at the moment it will do. Now I don't want to take up the whole bed. But I do want to create that vertical interest. And what I'll do, I'll plant some of my sweet peas at the bottom of this for them to grow up. And I'll be doing this in multiple different areas on the allotment. All I need to do is tie up the top with some twine to make this a little bit sturdier. Because if you've watched previous videos, you would have seen our runner beans falling over because of the weight of the produce that was on there and all the strong winds that we had through the summer months. It actually broke the canes and snapped them, and it ended up on the floor. Now I'll be doing exactly the same in front of my squash arch. Now I will be growing some sweet peas alongside the front, but I don't know whether they're going to get overtaken by the squashes or anything else that we're going to get planted up there. So I am actually going to put some teepees either side of the actual tunnel, just so there's a welcome scent as you first walk into your plot, because that's what it's about. It's about bringing joy as you step onto your plot. Now I'll probably change the design somewhat, and we have got some iron ones that we could use, but for now these will do, and it will start helping me see where I'm going to plant and what I'm going to do. Now these are going to go actually into the wood chip, and I will plant through the wood chip with the sweet peas. Now these can be moved, can be made bigger, can be changed position. This is just giving me an idea, but I think as you walk down the actual plot and you've got two nice rows of sweet peas, I think it will be really, really pretty. What do you think to my t-shirt? This is one of my designs for all those chicken lovers out there. This will be on the website very, very soon. Unfortunately, at the moment, it will be UK only. But I'll start having more and more designs on there, as well as my mugs and a few other little bits and pieces. I'll leave the link in the description below. So, this area that's covered in plastic here, this is going to be our bean area. Now we're going to be making a trellis of some sort using the chicken wire to go across. Now it's not something I wanted to do. I want something really pretty and ornate, but at the moment we just need things that are going to last and not fall apart. Any canes that we've used in the past have been very, very poor quality, and they end up snapping and breaking, and I don't want to spend any more money this year on anything for the plot, only the bare essentials. So buying new canes is not on our to-do list. We have got an awful lot of canes, but most of them you push into the ground or try to use, and they do snap extremely easy. So we're actually going to be doing something different for our bean area, which I'll do another video on. But I'm not going to actually take up this bit of plastic at the moment because I'm not quite ready to do the bean bed yet. And the longer I leave it on, the better it is to help deal with the weeds. But the netting will be down the middle, but I'll have trenches either side going all the way down to grow a lot of my tall variety of beans. Now I want to grow more tall varieties this year because I find the dwarf ones, with our wet summers at the moment, I'm struggling to get certain varieties to actually stay dry. Mainly my Belotti beans. Last year we grew dwarf ones and 99% of them actually rotted because of how wet it was. I couldn't get them to dry. And I want to be able to dry them on the plants if I can, because it makes my life so much easier than to have to take them indoors and try and dry them indoors and find space. So we've got climbing French beans, we've got climbing Belotti beans, we've got different varieties of the French beans, and of course we've got our runner beans. Now majority will be sown up and down on this side here, but again I'm going to dot them around the allotment to give a little bit of interest and a bit of height around, mainly towards the end of the beds, just like I grew last year I like to see things at different levels and not just everything on ground level. So I'll be excited to have a play for different areas where we're going to grow those beans. Another area that I'm intending to plant quite heavily, and it will probably be over time because of the expense of it, all depending on what seeds I can grow and what cuttings I can get to take. Now I have took some cuttings of some lavender, a little bit of rosemary, but I've only took 1 or 2, and I'm going to need an awful lot more. My idea was to have a whole row of lavender going all the way down to the bottom where the compost bins are. But I think I've got some other things I can put in here too. I've got some Rebecca, I've got some Cosmo. Obviously I've got a little bit of Wildflower seed, which is probably enough to do some of this area too. But to be honest, I want to keep the wood chip as is. Now it's only a very thin area down to the bottom where the slabs end, and then the rest is just wood chip. We get an awful lot of weeds from neighbouring plots and things, so we like to try and keep it quite heavily mulched on the actual borders. Now this isn't our fence, this is the other allotmenteer's fence, and I don't want to grow too high above this, so anything that I plant here I want to not go much higher really than the actual height of this fence. Now I would say it's about 3 foot or so, give or take. So I'll be selecting some plants to go all the way down here. But I want to make sure that they are beneficial for our native insects and pollinators, because I want to make the most of this area. And I just think it will be a fantastic pop of colour of whatever I choose to go down this whole one side. But that's going to take some plants. So we'll have to see how many seeds I can get to germinate and actually grow on well this year. Now some of them won't flower to the following year, but that's the thing about garden. There's not always an instant satisfaction. But in a couple of years, I'm really hoping that this border that I try to develop down here will really fill out and bring in all those bees and all those good insects. Now at the side of my greenhouse that I managed to put up myself not long ago, there's a little patio area a little bit further down. I've managed to pick up some of these cages, some of these cast iron cages. Now they are very rusted. I may paint them. I actually may just use them as is. I quite like the rustic look, but I'm just trying to find pots that's going to fit in there, just so I can actually have some plants and flowers trailing out of those baskets. But this whole area, I'm going to hopefully have either some strawberries in pots or some nice flowers and things like that. Now later on in the year I'll be sowing all over the place a load of spring bulbs. I think these are really important for your plot. This will provide really early food for all your bumblebees, and in fact I've seen about 4 or 5 around today already. So having something come up late winter, especially at this time of year, January, February, March, really good for those bumblebees. So that's pretty much what I've got planned on the flowers, and I'll be sowing them as and when they need to be sown. And we'll just have to wait and see how many I can get those to develop. But things don't have to be instant. You can save an awful lot of money by sowing your own flower seeds. If you buy a packet, normally you can get hundreds, if not more, of seeds within that packet for those flowers. Whereas if you went to a garden centre or bought small plants of them, they can be anything from £2 to £10 to £15 each. I'm growing a load of cactus dahlias, which if I'd bought dahlia bulbs separately, it would have been £5 to £10 each. Whereas the cactus dahlias, I get an awful lot of seed. And yes, you never quite know what you're going to get. And cactus dahlias isn't for everybody. It's a fantastic added bit of colour to your plot. So that's another plant that I'm actually working on at the moment. I'll also be bringing some of my allium bulbs down here as well. This year I'm really excited for the allotment. Not that I haven't been in previous years, but to be able to stand back and actually fully develop everything in the areas that we want to do, it feels really good. But an allotment plot is something that you continuously think about. You continuously change plans, because plans can change on your allotment. Your soil conditions, the weather conditions, your tastes, all can change over time. So don't be afraid to make those changes. Sometimes change is good. It's all about an experiment, and don't be afraid to experiment. So that's it for today, guys. I've really got to crack on. I've still got an awful lot of cleaning and tidying up to do, and to start really having a really good think about where we're planting and what we're planting where. I'm going to go and shove some more bean poles into the ground to give me some ideas of where I want different things to grow vertically, so I can add that interest as you're looking around the plot. So guys, if you've got any suggestions for future videos or any comments that you'd like to leave, make sure you leave them below in the comment section, and I'll try my hardest to get back to each and every one of you. So we'll see you in the next video.